Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today today we're learning the fourth Perek of Mishnayos Peah. You might notice in the background this banner. This is my banner for my Arba business located in Pomona, New York. If you need Arba, hit us up in the email, kolnashema1@gmail.com. We'll be in touch with you to help you with all your needs. Today's shir is sponsored Lila Nishmas Aaron Nachman ben Simcha HaKohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha Sarah Bashmol Leib, Yinam Moshe ben Yosef. May the Neshamas have an aliyah, and Refuah Shlema for Ada Sarah Bas Leah, Refuah Shlema Soshar Chali Yisrael. Perek Dalid in Mishnayos Peah is a long perek, so we're going to try to be brief, 11 Mishnayos, and we're going to get right into it. Hapeah Mishnah Hapeah Nitenes Meluchuba Karka. So now we're going to discuss the ways in which the poor people can collect peah. The peah is to be given while it is still attached to the ground. But the best thing is to leave it attached to the ground. You harvest around it, and the aniyim would come and cut it down themselves. Bedalis ubedekel malabayas morid umechalek lenin. But in the case of a grapevine, which is tied to a trellis, and the date palm is a very tall tree, and it's going to be very dangerous for the aniyim to climb the tree, to climb the vines, to climb up the trellises, in order to bring down the produce and the grain. The produce. The owner would be obligated to bring down the goods and distribute them equally to the poor, out of safety hazard. I got very excited about this because Dekel over here is a day palm, and we're in the 30 days before Sukkot, and Arba Minim is my business, and the Lulavam come from day palms. I didn't see this inside, but I'm going to speculate that when it comes to Peah, we're talking about just the dates and not the Lulavam, because we said earlier in the Masechta that everything had to be edible, and the dates are edible, but we don't usually eat Lulavam. Unless you have the hearts of palm, that's also not the same product, anyways. So I speculate, could be wrong on this. I'm not one of the Tanaim. I'm certainly not an Achron. I speculate that the Lulavam would not be part of the Chiv Peah, but I could be wrong on that. Rabbi Shimon says, Af b'chalike egozim. The same thing is regarding a walnut tree, that the owner the farmer would have to bring down the walnuts for distribution because it's dangerous to go up there if you don't know what you're doing. Afilu tishim v'sisha omrim chalek. Even if you had 99 poor people who are saying that they want it to be distributed, the echad omer levaz, the zeh shomin, and one person says that he wants to go and cut and grab as much as he can. We listen to him because that's really the halach. Just in general, the ani is supposed to go and cut the grain by himself, and therefore, even if you have 99 people who say that they want the farmer to distribute it and do the work, we say no, that the halach is according to the one who says he wants to go get himself. However, Mishnah Beis bedalis uvedekel ain't okay, but the law is not the same regarding, as we said, the grapevine and the date palm. Afilu tishim v'sisha omer levaz echad omer lechalik zeh shomish omer kalacha. Even if 99 people said that they want to climb the tree and get the stuff down, and the one guy says that he wants the farmer to distribute it, we listen to that one guy because the halacha is that the farmer is supposed to cut down the produce and distribute it in these circumstances. When it's too dangerous for the aniyim to go climb the trees themselves, they can, then the farmer has to do the work and bring it down for them and distribute it. Mishnah Gimel. Okay, now we're going to retouch upon what we just said in the first Mishnah. Natal mixas peah uzarka alasha. Okay, so the ani went into the field and he took some of the peah that he collected and he threw it over the rest in an attempt to thereby acquire the rest of the peah. He took some with his hand and he was cone of this, and now he's throwing it on, hoping that his peah that left his hand is now going to touch the other peah and claim ownership on all of it. Ain lo ba klum. He has no rights to any of it at all. Not stuff that was in his hand that he threw out, nor the peah that he intended to acquire. He lost everything. That was a bad idea. Okay, nafolo aleha ufirish talisole. So what if he threw himself over the standing peah, or the stuff that's standing in the field, or spread his cloak over it, or to acquire it? So you know that someone he has his dalet amos. His dalet amos, in a general case, the dalet amos is kodev. But also amen. You remove him from the grain, and he does not acquire anything for himself in that method. If he tries to deviate from the procedure that's set up, he loses. So the Kinyan Dalet Amos applies in Rishus Harabim, not in Rishus Yachid, which belongs to the farmer, and so not comes to Peah. The Chachamim did not allow that. V'chein b'leket v'chein b'omer hashicha, and the same rules apply to leket and to shicha, which the leket, as we said previously, is the individual stalks of grain that are left over, and shicha is the forgotten bundles. Same rules apply. You try any of these shenanigans, and you wind up losing what's in your hand altogether. Mishnah Dalet Peah ein kotzrin oso b'magalos ein okrin oso b'kardumos kadesh lo yaku ish esre'ehu. Okay, farmers know how to use farming tools. They know how to use harvest tools, and they can use them hopefully in a safe way. The aniyim, who are not so skilled in all these tools, they are the Mishnah says that the peah cannot be harvested or reaped with sickles, and it cannot be dug up with spades, which are used in different crops. Like the sickle is used for grain, and the spades are used for onions and other things like that. In order so that the poor people do not come to hit one another with these tools, either intentionally or unintentionally. We don't want to have a dangerous situation come up. This is also similar to the Mishnayos, and I think it's Yuma, where they used to have where the Kohanim used to run up the Mizbeach in order to do Chumash Hadeshin, and there was a contest where we got within 4 amos of each other. They won that contest, and one guy pushed another guy off of one coin, pushed another coin off the ramp of his Mizbeach, and he wound up injuring himself or dying. Where, as the Mishnah says, and the Chachamim said, this is unacceptable. We can't have this going on in our Mizbeach. And therefore, they instituted the lottery system where they stood in a circle and they put out 1 or 2 fingers and were counted as such. And that's what they go here. They were trying to avoid any dangerous situation, so therefore we're not allowing them to use the professional tools when they're not professional. Mishnah Hey, Shalosh Abba Ayos Bayom Shachar Ubechatzos Ubemincha. There are 3 times in the day where the farmer lets in the poor people to collect the Peah in the morning, and then at noon and the late afternoon. The Bartanura says in the morning it's for the nursing mothers who who go to the fields because their kids are usually sleeping at that time, and they can quickly run out the field and get some grain during at chatzos, like in the middle of the day. It's the school age kids who go out during lunchtime to go get some peah, and during the afternoon, during mincha time, is the zakenim, it's the elderly who are much slower moving, and they couldn't get there until mincha time. So 3 different times the Indian would go, the farmer would go out and help them with their payah. Continuing with the second part of Mishnah, hey, Rabbi Gamliel Omer lo amru el kadesh lo yifchas. Rabbi Gamliel said, we said the rule of 3, so that the farmers should not make fewer appearances. 3 is the minimum. However, they can make more. They want to do hosafas and add on more times. Matov manoyim. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. Rabbi Akiva Omer lo amru el kadesh lo yosif. Rabbi Akiva says that the Rabbanim said the Rikiva said that the Chazal's rule was the maximum 3 times, so that, but they could make fewer so that they don't have an unfair practice of scheduling unannounced pay collections to the aniyim that are the favorites. It has to be equal to all, and you can't play any favoritism when it comes to payout. So Mishnah talks about a voluntary practice that made the collection of pay even more convenient for the poor. So based namer hayimalaktin ala chevel v'nostin pay mikol umam umam. Instead of leaving pay for the entire field, at the end, the farmers of Beis Namer would gather the produce of the fields along the rope. They would extend from the beginning of each row near the end. And then when they reached the end of the rope, they would leave the rest as payout for each and every row. So you're leaving off a section. Going on to Mishnah Vav, you have a idol worship. Is a farmer in Eretz Yisrael. He's an idol worshiper, and he reaped this field. And then, after he reaped the field, he became a ger. He converted to Judaism before the bundles were produced, and before the bundles of produce were moved to the threshing floor. So they're at the quasi stage. So pater min haleket min hashecha min hapeah. He is exempt. He is not obligated in all 3 of these laws, like a shecha and peah, regarding the field, because it starts when he reaps the field. Since he wasn't Jewish when he did the reaping, therefore he's not chayav to give the leket shecha and peah now that he's a yid. Rabbi Yehuda Omer chayav b'shich. Rabbi Yehuda says that no, he's chayav in shecha, in the forgotten bundle, because the shecha is only something that takes place at the time that it's bundled, which is when it's removed from the field. That's at a later stage than from the reaping. Going on to Mishnah Zion. Mishnah Zion. Hikdish Kama Ufada Kama. So, what if you have a guy, a farmer, that he was makdish his crop, he consecrated to the base of English while it was standing in the field, and then he redeemed it while it was still standing. He never chopped it down. So chayav. So he has a chiyuv, he has an obligation to give leket shecha and pay it when it's eventually harvested. Okay, case number two. Armin, Armin Ufada, Armin Chayach. Roman. If he if he if he was makdish the Omer when it was already made into bundles, and he redeemed it while it was still in bundles. Because he made the bundles, he was makdish it, and then he was put it while there were still bundles. So chayiv is also chayiv in Leket and Peah. Because the status didn't change. It's the same status of both stage one and stage two. So says the Mishnah writer, Kama ufalda armin petura. That if he was makdas his crop while it was standing, and then he redeemed it after it was made into bundles, it's petura, it's potter from Leket, Shikha, and Peah. Ship is shas, chavasa, haisa petura. Is at the time of its being obligated in his matanos, meaning at the time that it was cutting, it at the time of the cutting, it was potter because it had belonged to the base of Mikdash, and therefore he would not be chayiv in like a shikha and pay once he redeems it. Going on to Mishnah Ches, Kiyotziva. Similarly, Hamakdish Perosov Ad Shelo Bo Laonis Hamaisvus Upadan. If one was makdish his fruits, he consecrated them to the base of Mikdash before they reached the Meiser stage, and then he redeemed them, still before the Meiser stage, meaning that, as you said earlier, that the pile was not smooth yet, because they only become chayav and Meiser once you smooth over the piles. So he was makdish it before the Mareach stage. Chayavin, they are chayiv in Meiser, because they're not because they because they were no they're chayiv in Meiser because they had already been redeemed. Okay, Mishabo leonas Meiserus upadan chayiv. But if it was makdish them after reaching the Meiser stage, and then he redeemed them, and then they're also chayiv in Meiser. In both cases, Hedish and Ad Shelo Nigmaru, Ugarman Agizbor, if, however, he was makdish them before they were finished the smoothing process, and the temple Gabai, the Gizbor, had finished them, the Turin, and then he redeemed them. So he makdish them before they were finished with the smoothing, and then he redeemed them after the Beis Hamikdash Gabai they're finished with them. Then he's put there for Meiser, because at the time of their obligation, they were, when they were makdish, they were put there from Meiser, and therefore in that case, they would not be chayav Meiser. Moving on to Mishnah Tesh, Mi shalakar es Peah v'amar hareizu le'ish ploni ani. If someone is rich, a wealthy guy who has no entitlement to Peah, if he collected Peah from a field, and he says, I'm collecting this Peah for Ploni, for this man. So what's the din? Can he do that or not? The Reelezer says Zachalo. He did the kidding. It's fine. But Chazal says he has to give that produce, that Peah, to the first ani that he's found, and he cannot collect it from somebody else. It doesn't work that way. Leket chayav b'maisros. The Mishnah continues, says that the leket, the shechet, and peah from a farmer who's an idol worshiper is chayav in meiser. Since he's not obligated to leave the Manasariyah. So he's not giving the Manasariyah, so therefore he still has to give. He has to give Meister, but he's not hired to give the Leket Shecha and Peah. That's only Sadcha. It's only the field that belongs to you. Whereas it's not the Simchiyah when it comes to Meister itself. Ella Ivkain Hifkir. Unless he declared the Leket Shecha and Peah Hefker to both everyone alike. In that case, the Hefker is then exempt from Meiser, but is free for all to take. Okay, the past 3.5 bracket we're talking about Peah. Now moving into the topic of Leket. Ezu Leket in Mishnah Yud. Ezu Leket. So what is Leket? The Leket Hanosher b'shas chatzira is any stalks that fall to the ground at the time of the reaping. It's usually take 1 or 2 stalks. If it's 3 or more, you can usually pick it up. Haya kotzer katzim layado. If he was, it gives an exception. If he was cutting and he cut a handful of grain, which is the normal way of harvesting grain, it takes a handful. Talash malakumso, or you plucked a fistful of some other produce, but instead of the person dropping the stalks, in the normal course of cutting, he coats nafal miyad la'aretz. He was struck by a thorn, and something fell from his hand to the ground. Like he's doing the work, and he has it in his hand, and then he gets his zets on his hand, and he wants to dropping it. That belongs to the owner. He did not forget it. He did not leave it there by accident. He had some sort of issue happen to his hand. He wanted dropping it. He can go pick it up. That's what still belongs to him. He does not have to leave it as leket. Continue to another. There's 2 more conditions. There's other conditions. Toch hayal v'toch magel. If the stalks fall from within the hand or within the sickle, they belong to the poor. It's inside. Echad yad magel. But if they fall behind the hand or behind the sickle, then they belong to the owner. Since the stalk that fell is behind both the hand and behind the owner, it is not leket. If it's in front of them, it is. If it's behind them, it's not. So what if it was neither within or behind? Rosh hayad rosh magel. If the stalk had been held with the tip of the hand, like between his fingertips, or it was cut with the tip of the sickle, and it wasn't inside the hand, it wasn't outside the hand, it was in the front of the hand. Rabbi Yishmael Omer La'aniyim, Rabbi Yishmael says it's leket and belongs to the poor. Rabbi Akiva Omer the Baal Bayis. Rabbi Akiva says it's not leket, it belongs to the owner. The tip is behind. It's the same as behind. And last Mishnah for today, Mishnah Yid Aleph, Chori and the Malim Shivitoch Hakama. If ant holes that are in a field with the same standing crop, if mean that they have kernels of grain in them, Arei Hein Shal Bal Habayis, then they belong to the owner. Since the harvest has not yet begun, there cannot be any grains that belong to the poor. Therefore, the grain belongs to the owner. But if the ant holes are in the field that behind where the reapers are, meaning that they had already started, and even in that, even the part that has ant holes that have not yet been cut down, and the top grains in those holes that belong to the poor, they belong to the poor, and the bottom ones belong to the owner. Rabbi Meir Omer, Va'akol Aniyim, Aniyim Shesavik Leket Leket. Rabbi Meir says that all the grains in these holes belong to the poor, because the rule is that possible leket must be considered leket, and therefore they belong to the poor person. That is the end of Perek Daled. Tomorrow we will do Perek Hey. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day.